featuring Max Goldwasser.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us on this historic night in America and across the globe. We do begin with breaking news. The United States has now entered into war with Iran. President Trump's two-week deadline for negotiations turned into just 2 days, sending strikes into 3 nuclear sites in Iran. In an address to the nation, Trump called for peace, but made clear more attacks would follow if Iran retaliated. Here's ABC's Marcus Moore with the latest from Tel Aviv.
Just hours after announcing the U.S. successfully struck 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, President Trump addressing the nation this evening.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
Last Thursday, President Trump had set a 2-week deadline to decide whether the U.S. would join the Israelis and help strike Iran's nuclear facilities. But the president and his national security team opting to carry out this military operation now.
We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue.
This comes after sources told ABC News multiple B-2 stealth bombers were headed to Guam. Those bombers are the only U.S. aircraft capable of dropping the 30,000-pound explosive that could potentially damage or destroy Iran's Fordo nuclear facility, which is buried deep underground in a mountain. Satellite imagery could help determine whether these strikes took out the Fordo facility, but experts say the only way to really know is to get someone on the ground.
Considering how Mossad has been operating with impunity inside of Iran in an extraordinary way, maybe the Israelis have the ability to go in and to find ways to at least make sure that those bunkers at Fordo have been taken out.
And now concerns over Iran's promised retaliation. The U.S. State Department says it has been evacuating U.S. diplomats and their families who wish to leave the region. And Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei had already threatened retaliation against the U.S. if it attacked Iran. Marcus Moore, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
We're now bringing in national security expert Ron B. joining us via Zoom. Ron, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we heard from the president short remarks, which is unusual for him, but he did at one point say if peace does not come quickly, the U.S. plans to attack other targets with speed and skill. So he's calling for peace, but he is leaving the door open for more. Do you think that this eliminated a threat or ignited a new one?
Well, that message is to Iran, clearly. The message to the American people is he took action. He attacked the 3 main nuclear sites of Iran, decided it was in the United States' best interest to do so. But the next short-term thing he has to worry about is a counterattack from Iran against the 19 bases in the Middle East and our servicemen and women that are there. And so he was being letting us know what had happened and also sending the message to Iran that they should not counterattack or else they will receive more of America's military might.
How do you anticipate Iran to react?
Well, I think that they'll want to retaliate against our bases in Iraq and possibly Syria. But I think that Israel has decimated their military to a point where I'm not sure what they can do. Their leadership has been assassinated. Their air defenses have been destroyed. Their air force has been non-existent. What navy they have, if they were to mine the Persian Gulf, that would be terrible for 1/5 of the oil, and that's why our oil prices have gone up because of fears of that very thing. So if they do anything, the United States is prepared to retaliate. But in the interim, I think the Israelis are just going to continue doing what they've been doing for the last week, and that is to destroy the military infrastructure of Iran.
Donald Trump frequently during his campaign trail promised to avoid engaging in future wars and end existing conflicts. Why do you feel like he felt he had no choice but to go back on that word and do it now?
That's a very good question. I think he'll explain that over time, but I think what he came to the conclusion from not only Israeli intelligence, but his own intelligence community, that Iran was very close to getting a nuclear weapon, and that he could not allow.
Leading up to this attack, the U.S. was already shifting warships in the Middle East and military aircrafts, one of them being the USS Carl Vinson, which is homeported here in San Diego. It's a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier stationed right now in the Arabian Sea. Was its involvement, combined with the others, a sign that this was imminent?
Yes, I think in totality, the Vincent being there, the Nimitz carrier group being there, the 31 refueling tankers going to be there in order to refuel planes if necessary, including a B-2. The B-2 shifting from the United States to Dodge, as they call it, Diego Garcia, as well as Guam. I mean, the idea is that we were prepared to give the president options, and he chose the option to attack.
It's an unprecedented move, potentially an unusual one as well, because it's being reported Trump did not alert members of the House Intelligence Committee. To what extent is the president even allowed to engage in war and use military force in this fashion without congressional approval?
Well, that's always a debate, but it comes down to the president does have the authority, because you don't want it to leak out that something's going to happen, because then you put American servicemen and women at risk, and for political purposes. And so he certainly didn't want to do that. And I think that may be the rationale for delaying talking to the main parties until this was happening, because this is, American presidents have not attacked Iran since the Islamic Republic started in 1979. From Jimmy Carter on, nobody's done it. So this is unprecedented for the Islamic Republic. Now the question is what happens next, and that's what the president was trying to address in his short talk to the American people, to say we're prepared to do more, but now's the time to talk peace.
Yeah, and this comes after White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Thursday that Trump was going to make a decision within the next 2 weeks whether or not he would use military force directly against Iran. We got our answer in 2 days. Do you think that was part of a strategy?
That's a wise thing to do, because you don't want to telegraph 2 weeks from now something's going to happen. They could have moved a lot of stuff in 2 weeks away from the nuclear sites, and so so it makes sense that you would give them that false impression, but decide earlier.
One final question for you: how would you define this moment in American and international history?
Well, I think it's one of the most important moments in what I would call preemptive non-proliferation, knocking out a nuclear program of a country that was destined to use it against Israel and even possibly the United States. So I think it's a very important moment that at a certain point we have to realize that negotiations are always the first priority, but we have to be prepared to act if they fail. And these negotiations have failed over 20 years, so it was time to act. And I think this moment will be judged on that criteria.
Trump said on Truth Social right after the attack, now is the time for peace. Only time will tell if that is, in fact, what comes of this new chapter in the conflict. Ron B., thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.